The recording is okay, perfect. So good morning, everyone. Welcome to our joint press conference titled Conventional and Organic Pesticides Compared. I'm Eva, I'm Communications Manager at IBMA Organics Europe. We are the European umbrella organization for organic food and farming. And why are we here? So as you will have seen in the emails that we send out, we gathered you to talk about pesticides. Why are we talking about this? So the EU has issued a farm to fork strategy to realize its European Green Deal, specifically its food system ambitions. What is in the farm to fork strategy? Among others, a legally binding European-wide, EU-wide target for a 50-cent reduction for chemical pesticides by 2030, and at the same time increase the share of organic land farmed in organic farmland in Europe to 25%. So to realize the pesticide reductions, the European Commission is reviewing the existing sustainable use of pesticides directive that will turn into the sustainable use of pesticides regulation. As there are negotiations and new law is being rewritten, of course, there are, as you probably have seen, reputation damaging attacks on the use of plant protection products in organic agriculture on the rise. And we invited you all here for a fact check. Specifically, a scientific paper by Helmut Burtscher-Schaden et al. On the toxicity profile of natural substances versus synthetic ones. This might sound quite abstract to you for now, but rest assured, in about 20 minutes, you will know what this is about. So how are we going to go about today or this morning? We have 4 excellent panelists who will share their organization's views. I will introduce them, and then after these speakers and they've had their say, the floor is yours, and then we will open the floor to your questions, namely journalist questions, because this is a press conference. Without further ado, I am going to introduce the first two speakers at once. First off is Jan Plagge, our president of IBMA Organics Europe, who will frame the paper's results in the context of the political strategies for EU pesticides reduction and strengthening organic farming to ensure our agriculture's productivity for the next generations. Immediately after him, Helmut Burtscher-Schaden, biochemist at Global 2000, will speak, and he will present the results of the new peer-reviewed study that I just mentioned on the toxicological comparison of active pesticide substances approved for conventional and organic agriculture in Europe. Jan, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Eva, and thanks to all joining this press conference. Maybe you probably know this is our second press conference in the context of the discussion how to reach this target of 50% pesticide reduction, and after the Commission presented their draft on a sustainable use of pesticide regulation. Today we want to make a deep dive in the issue of risk and substances used in conventional and organic agriculture. And you probably know that the organic principles are translated into rules, and these rules are under permanent development on governmental and on private level. And two main characteristics of these rules of organic agriculture is first, that it's based on a closed loop production, and second, that the use of synthetic chemical inputs, pesticides and fertilizers are banned. So external inputs are largely replaced by the farm's own resources and by ecosystem services, like using robust crops, varieties, healthy soils to make plants less vulnerable against pests, attracting and protecting beneficial insects to control pests, and overall increase biodiversity on the fields to increase the resilience of the agroecological systems. The only pesticides that can be used in organic farm systems are natural substances like plant extract, minerals like sulfur, like copper, like baking powder, or microorganisms. Importantly, these so-called natural pesticides may only be used as a last resort in those cases where production methods and biological plant protection measures alone are not sufficient. There's no use of pesticides, even this allowed natural pesticide, on the main surface of organic managed land. More than 90% of the organic managed land is with zero use of all plant protection products. So, and where it is used are mostly specialty crops like fruits, apples, wine, vineyards. As consequence, organic farming is, contrary to conventional farming, largely independent from this chemical industry and the volatile price of synthetic fertilizers and pesticides. And it's one of the cheapest and easiest methods, political measures, to reduce the use of pesticides and fertilizers. By organic farming, organic farming is highly dependent on ecosystem services, and that's why organic farmers have to protect and increase biodiversity. An EU-wide expansion of organic agriculture to 25% is one of the central measures of the EU Farm to Fork strategy to protect biodiversity. Unfortunately, since this target has been officially on the table, organic agriculture has increasingly faced credit-damaging claims that deny the widely scientifically recognized benefits of organic agriculture and even speak of ecological trade-offs compared to intensive conventional production methods. Some may remember the interview of the CEO of the world's largest agrochemical company who criticized the farm to fork goal on 25% organic and claimed that organic farming would harm the climate and people in Africa would have to starve if we ate more and more organic products. Such we feed the world narrative from big industry have been known for a long time and have been repeatedly rebutted by comprehensive scientific research, on which we will not go further on detail today. Today, we will take a deeper look, a deeper dive into different kinds of claims which are related to the use of pesticide in organic farming. Claims that are closely linked to a deeply problematic indicator for measuring the risk of pesticide, the so-called harmonized risk indicator 1, which was proposed in the SUR by DG Sante, by the Commission. A remarkable example for such misleading claims is the official statement of CropLife Europe, the European umbrella of pesticide manufacturers, to the Farm to Fork strategy, where this organization warns for ecological trade-offs due to an increase in organic agriculture. Since this would lead, this is a quote, to an increased overall volume of pesticide use in Europe. If this claim was true, the expectations of many organic consumers would be disappointed. Moreover, it would have to be questioned whether expanding organic agriculture could make the hoped for contribution to restore biodiversity. So this is really a reason for a fact check. And that's what Dr. Helmut Burtscher will do now with his presentation of this new scientific study. Helmut Burtscher, the floor is yours now.
Thank you, Jan. My name is Helmut Burtscher-Schaden. I'm a biochemist that has been working at Global 2000 for many years. Today, I want to present to you very briefly some key findings of a study that Jan Plage called a fact check, rightly. And that's exactly how it started. Organic Europe commissioned Global 2000 to do a fact check on the before mentioned industry claims, which are, after all, somewhat serious because they suggest that the combination of pesticide use and risk, after all, is this what the EU wants to reduce by 50%, and that this is higher in organic farming than it's in conventional farming. And if it's true, then this would represent a rather problematic trade-off of important farm-to-fork targets. So the fact check brought out quite significant and very impressive results, I think, and was then further developed to a scientific study that I now want to share with you briefly. And to do so, I will try to share the screen. Yep, and I think here, that's done. Okay. So, just a moment. So, I think that I'm not in the right starting point, so I have to go back. Yeah. This study has been published in the peer-reviewed scientific journal Toxics, and this is also the moment where I want to thank my colleague Thomas Stoßberger from the Environmental Research Institute Global 2000, a colleague of mine, and to Professor Johann Saller from the University of Natural Resources and Life Sciences Vienna for the very pleasant cooperation. Together, we assessed the European Commission's pesticide database, and we identified 390 pesticide active substances that are currently approved in the European Union for outdoor uses. All of these substances must meet the same approval criteria, and of these 390 substances, we identified 134 that are allowed in conventional and organic agriculture, and all of them are natural substances. The remaining 256 pesticides are only approved for conventional farming. 90% of them are synthetic chemicals. So aim of the study was to compare these different types of substances in the toxicological, with regard to the toxicological and hazard properties. So what we took as a benchmark were hazard classifications and the health-based guidance values, and both are established in the course of the European approval process by ECHA and EFSA in case they're deemed necessary. And what we found by doing this analysis was that the difference between both groups, pesticide active substances from the conventional agriculture and from organic pesticide active substances, their differences were highly significant. Regarding hazard classifications, 53%, and this is the left bar that you see here, 53% of the conventional pesticides carry such hazard labels, but with natural pesticide active substances, only 3% do so. And warnings of the most concerning hazards, such as possible harm to the unborn child, suspected carcinogenicity, or acute lethal effects when swallowed, inhaled, or through skin contact, were found with conventional pesticides for between 1 and 20 of the pesticides, but only in 3% of the organic pesticides. Sorry, in 0% of the organic pesticides, 3% had classifications, but none of them had these more concerning classifications. And for more detail, due to time constraints, I have to refer to our article and also to the question answer session. So now I go further to the health-based guidance values that we also assessed in our study. Here too, we see a highly significant difference. Very briefly, the graph shows the comparison of the acceptable daily intake, which defines the boundary between still safe exposure and no longer safe exposure to pesticide residues in food. And for 93% of natural substances, the big green bar on the left, the health-based guidance values was not deemed necessary by EFSA. So these substances don't need any threshold value. In contrast with synthetic pesticides, such values had to be set for the vast majority of these, all the blue bars right from the big green one in this graph. So to summarize, the differences we found are as significant as they are unsurprising when you take a closer look at the origin of these pesticides. Because while synthetic pesticides undergo a screening program to identify the substances with the highest toxicity and thus highest efficacy, the majority of the natural substances are not even substances in the strict sense, but living microorganisms. These naturally occurring organisms make up 56% of the pesticides in organic farming. They have no hazardous properties. Another 19% of organic pesticides are classified from the outset as as low-risk active substances, for example, baking powder, ferric phosphate, or these substances are just approved as basic substances, e.g. sunflower oil, vinegar, milk. So these are all non-toxic substances that belong to the list of pesticides that can be used, are approved in organic farming. So one thing that this fact check has shown very clearly is there are no ecological trade-offs due to increased toxicity of natural pesticides used in organic farming, because they are not more toxic, they are quite less toxic. So the only explanation that left is that organic farming and organic farmers would use more pesticides and would use them more intensively and more frequently than conventional farms. But let's be clear, from the outset, this is definitely not the case. So organic farming can do without pesticides on more than 90% of the cultured area. So how could the representatives of the major pesticide manufacturers operating in Europe claim such a trade-off exists? And the answer can be found in an extremely problematic risk indicator. I think Jan Plage has mentioned it already. This indicator is designated to measure the reduction of the use and risk of pesticides under the farm to fork targets, the so-called harmonized risk indicator 1, which was officially adopted by EU member states in 2019 and is now seriously endangering the Green Deal's farm to fork and biodiversity strategy. Therefore, I would like to use the remaining about 4 minutes, I think, to briefly outline the problem and the solution also of this indicator by means of an example that I have prepared for you. So, a conventional farmer and an organic one have both an apple orchard of 1 hectare, and both have a problem with scab that needs some intervention. The conventional farmer uses a synthetic fungicide, difenoconazole. It's very effective, but also toxic to aquatic organisms, persistent, and therefore belongs to the most dangerous pesticides that are classified as candidates for substitution. The organic farmer uses the natural fungicide potassium hydrogen carbonate, also known as baking powder. It's quite effective, harmless to humans, and not dangerous to the environment, easy degradable, and classified by the Commission as a low-risk pesticide. But the mode of action of those pesticides is completely different, and so are the hectare application rates. The conventional farmer needs only 56 grams of the synthetic pesticide for his 1 hectare orchard, which is less than a knife tip per square meter, whereas the organic farmer needs 7.5 kilograms baking soda, about 1 big teaspoon per square meter, which is 134 times more. The problem with the harmonized risk indicator is now that it ignores these very different hectare application rates and only considers the absolute amount of kilograms used and postulates a proportionality between these kilogram amounts and the resulting risks. Therefore, in our example, the harmonized risk indicator calculates in the first step a 134-fold higher risk for the use of harmless baking powder than for the use of the hazardous synthetic pesticide. In a second step, the result is then improved somewhat by applying so-called risk factors. Risk factor 1 for baking soda as a classified low-risk pesticide, risk factor 16 for difenoconazole, which is a candidate for substitution and falls into the highest risk group of authorized pesticides. But still, the risk attributed to the application of the dangerous synthetic pesticide is 8 times lower than the risk attributed to the natural low-risk pesticide, according to the harmonized risk indicator. But of course, it should be the other way around. And this example that I now showed you is by no means a particularly extreme one, quite the contrary. If we compare a common natural fungicide like sulfur, 6.5 kilogram per hectare application rate, with the synthetic fungicide, also very common, pinconazole, 32 gram per hectare application rate when you talk about powdery mildew in vine, then the harmonized risk indicator calculates even a 200 times lower risk for treatment with the synthetic fungicide. This indicator, to say it clear, is so unbelievable pathetic. It is designed to greenwashing synthetic pesticides, the most dangerous one of the synthetic pesticides, because they are used in very small amounts. For example, like neonics, they would have benefited for this. And there is, and this is the good thing, or no, it's not a good thing, but there is someone out there who likes this indicator, saying that the harmonized risk indicator is a reasonable way to measure hazard reduction of pesticides. So maybe you guess who this could be. Is it a surprise? I would say no. So this is my last slide, the good news. The good news is we can easily see and understand that there are no ecological trade-offs between the farm-to-fork targets of reducing pesticides, protecting sensitive areas, and increasing organic farming. The only problem that we face is a misleading indicator, but luckily, this indicator can be easily fixed, repaired, and transformed into a meaningful and robust indicator. In the course of the political negotiations of the Sustainable Use Regulation, this should be done. The German authority, Umweltbundesamt, has proposed a detailed solution, its scientific opinion, that you can download here. And Sarah Wiener, luckily, who is the main rapporteur of the Sustainable Use Regulation, so the file that will make pesticide reduction targets legally binding for the European member states, Sarah Wiener has already fixed the indicator according to the proposal of the Umweltbundesamt experts in her report that will be presented, I think, next week in the European Parliament. So this is the good news, and with this, I will give over the floor to Jennifer from IBMA, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Helmut. And thank you to IFOAM for the invitation and for hosting this discussion. I'm Jennifer Lewis. I'm the Executive Director of IBMA, which is the International Biocontrol Manufacturers Association. So the association of companies that manufacture biological control of pests and diseases. So I will try and share my screen. So biocontrol is something for everybody. It's something for all growers, be they organic growers or be they conventional growers. What is it? Firstly, it's used on millions of hectares today around the world, whether that be here in the EU or indeed Brazil, US, Asia. And it can be used by organic farmers or maybe by more conventional farmers, and is used frequently by them if they want to manage in a more agroecological approach. They want to manage chemical resistance by making programs, or indeed transitioning to a different type of farming over time. So, or in some cases, they simply want to use more IPM and minimize their use of more conventional products. So what is it? It's can be invertebrates, that's insects or mites that control pests and diseases. Now, those are regulated at national level in every member state that chooses to regulate them. Then the microbials, the semiochemicals, and the natural substances are all regulated in the same way as chemistry here in Europe. So we have microbials, which are microorganisms that may compete for space, or they may actually control, or they may ultimately infect a particular pest. So what you see here is Bavaria bassiana that has controlled a weevil. Or you may have semiochemicals, which are pheromones that are released by insects day to day, but one can release more of a say of a sex pheromone, so that the male of the pest can't find the female. Then there are no fertilized eggs, and then there's no maggot or larvae that grows in the fruit, so your fruit don't have any pests. Or you may have a more natural substance like plant extract. So here you see geraniums and thyme. So both have a registration here in Europe as a plant extract to control various pests and diseases. So biocontrol is a range from invertebrates to semiochemicals to microbials to natural substances. But biocontrol is so much more than just pest and disease control, because it's working with the ecosystem services. So biodiversity is in fact respected, certainly maintained, and in many cases enhanced. And we see that from a lot of the studies around organic farming that are using it on a very regular basis. We also see benefits at a soil level, because the soil health is maintained and even improved, and reducing the risks of contamination. But perhaps as importantly, if not even more importantly, that once you have a good structure to your soil, you can also start to manage and mitigate some climate changes that you might have. So if you have a sudden flooding or more drought, then if your soil's in a really strong structure and very healthy and biodiverse, then that actually helps you to manage those changes that happen all the more frequently in the recent years. And also the obvious benefits around human health. And in terms of farming, farmers are very careful of running a business, and farmers are very we have plenty of examples of farmers who are profitable and can manage very effectively with biocontrol. So given these benefits, one of the things we need to do is to allow these biological alternatives for pest control onto the market faster in order to really realize these benefits. So we've been advocating as IBMA for a while about how we can speed up really the authorization of biological control. It's very important to us that it is regulated. We advocate, and we are today regulated. That is crucial. It's really important. But we believe we can get there a lot faster. And in most other countries in the world, it takes 2 to 3 years to get a biocontrol onto the market. In Europe, it takes 5 to 10 years. So we have a very complicated system, which the Commission is working hard to try to simplify. But this takes a lot of time, and we really need to speed up. So the first thing that we like to look at it as a three-step process. The first is to really ensure we have a definition of biological control, and the Sustainable Use Regulation has made a definition, proposed a definition of biological control, which we really welcome. It contains the 4 types of biological control, and we believe that's really a fantastic step forward. So we're very, very pleased with that. What we'd like to do, though, is to move on and try to modify, adapt 1107 in some small ways in order just to allow us to get there quicker. I think it's good for everybody if biological control is able to reach the marketplace quicker. There are various ways that could be done, including a provisional authorization, facilitating label extension and expansion onto different crops, and maybe extending the timescale that you allow a biological control product to be there before you ask for everything to be re-reviewed. Ultimately, but this will take some time, but ultimately we should have a regulation that actually is specific for biological control, but that's something for the future. The other area that's really crucial is that we have evaluators who have expertise in biological control evaluation. This is something that's really important because it's very difficult if you're used to evaluating one type of product to then move to one that has completely different modes of action, more around regulating pest and disease rather than controlling per se. So the 3 steps in definition, we welcome it. We would like to see that continue and progress to make some small modifications to 1107. And ultimately, we will need a new regulation for biological control. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much for sharing your point of view, Jennifer. Let's move over to Lily Baloch, President of Agroecological Europe, to talk a little bit about the preventative natural measures in plant protection that she and Agroecology Europe stand for. Lily, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for the organizers for organizing this crucial event. And as the speakers before me have already insisted, the urging fact and the desirableness and the feasibility of reducing pesticide use in Europe. And I would really like to stress how important it is to be achieved within, but also beyond the farm gate. And how many diverse actors we have to engage in this process. Not only the upstream and the downstream industries, but also the consumers have their role to play. But most importantly, and why we are here today, is that the crucial role that the political decision makers are playing in this. Because either they are hindering or they are enabling an environment where they make this change possible. As you might know, an extensive body of scientific literature shows that agroecology is a powerful approach to tackle many key challenges of the agricultural system nowadays. Not only it helps to maintain and improve agricultural productivity, we can produce healthy food. Agroecological systems reduce the negative impacts of agriculture on ecosystem and human health, but it also ensures the economic viability of farms, and it can adapt agriculture to the climate change, but also revert the trend of the loss of biodiversity. It is often said that economically it's not viable. However, I would like to draw the attention that recently a panel of around 30 European scientists published that agroecological systems are often more profitable than conventional agriculture ones. So agroecology offers guiding principles and bright perspectives to agriculture and to the whole society to tackle the multiple challenges that we are facing: the climate, the biodiversity, the fossil energy, and the social crisis. It is urgent to restore soil fertility and soil life, increase soil organic matter contents by sequestrating carbon in soils, restore biodiversity in agriculture, improve product quality, health of citizens, and reverse the social decline of the agricultural sector. And there are many great agroecological practices that I could mention now, but I would just like to draw the attention to a few ones, like reduced or no tillage, the continuous soil covering with the use of different and with a diversity of cover crops, longer crop rotations, the direct seeding into these cover crops, grass strips and hedges and agroforestry systems, and as well the integration of livestock into the system, because all these help to develop a dense ecological network and improve the agroecosystem sustainability by enhancing the ecosystem services, which are so important. So it goes way beyond the substitution of chemical inputs by more natural alternatives, but agroecology offers guiding principles to redesign the whole farming and the food system, and therefore nurturing and using ecosystem services and reducing the dependency on external inputs, and creates thus an autonomous and resilient food system. So putting in place these agroecological practices, as you might understand, implies a shift from the chemical-intensive agriculture towards a knowledge-intensive agriculture. That's why we need to provide appropriate technical support and training for farmers through the development of independent farm advisory services all over Europe. And this is a key element for a drastic pesticide reduction policy in Europe. And we need to combine the experience of sharing between farmer to farmer networks and the farmers and the training advisors, because this is the only effective way of quickly developing profitable and efficient agroecological systems. So there needs to be a real political support for reducing the use of synthetic pesticides, and more generally for building more autonomous and resilient farming and food systems to promote agroecology, as it is the most effective and, if not the only way, to ensure food security and the continuous provision of ecosystem services in the short, medium, and long term in Europe and worldwide. That is why the implementation of the Farm to Fork strategy is crucial. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your statement, Lily. And thank you to all of the panelists for sharing your insights. I am sure there's quite a few questions coming your way, I'm sure, and I'm hopeful. Before opening the floor to journalists, I would like to inform you that we will send out a press release and documentation after the press conference. So later today, you will find all the documents that were referenced, and you'll also find contact details in case you do not get to ask your question. So let's stop the recording and open the floor to journalists.